Special thanks to the K Family Foundation, lead underwriters for Mosaic. Hello, my name is Barbara Kay, and on behalf of the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County, I'd like to welcome you to our program, Mosaic. Our special focus on Mosaic today is Hillel, the Foundation for Jewish Campus Life. We'll be back with our guests and our program right after this brief message. Welcome back, and welcome back to you, Wayne Firestone, CEO and President of Hillel.
Thanks so much for having me here.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. First of all, Hillel is extraordinary. I want you to share for our viewers what you see as the overall mission of Hillel.
To inspire every Jewish student to make an enduring commitment to Jewish life, learning, and Israel. And I'm going to put an emphasis on the Israel part because that is an explicit reference that we decided to write into our vision statement of the organization as part of our new strategic plan. And it really comes from a sense of an entire generation that is experiencing Israel, physically visiting it through the Birthright program and the Masah program and other programs that allow them to form their own opinions about Israel and not just accept what they see in the media.
Yeah, you know what the trick though, Wayne, is literally to engage them. How do you get them? It's one thing to have terrific ideas and opportunities. It's another thing to pull them in and say, you know, I want to be part of this. How do you do that?
We had to make a strategic shift from what I would call wholesale engagement, have a great program, bring a good speaker, have a little nosh, to retail engagement. Meaning an individual has to say, this is really interesting. Come join me and a group of friends. It's a very, very social generation. They're mischaracterized often. Everybody thinks of them as running around tethered to their favorite electronic device, and they do. They are very tech savvy, and they use a lot of technology. However, it's a mistake to think that they don't actually value FaceTime. Not just Facebook time, but FaceTime, face-to-face. They like social activity in person. They just use all their technological tools in order to organize in ways that we used to use a Rolodex and things like that.
You know something, what's interesting is that Hillel used to be very, very kind of limited in attraction for young college kids. We had a very limited opportunity. Now, it's changed dramatically since I think it was Joel Friedman took it over and Edgar Bronfman got involved. It changed completely. They reached out to the students.
It's very true. And I think we've learned a lot of things that I think are important not only for Hillel but for the entire Jewish community, because we partner with everyone and our graduates move on to other places in the community as leaders and as participants. So first of all, we have to think about ourselves as not just institutions. We know that particularly with younger generations and this millennial generation, they are very anti-institutional in many respects. They're not very loyal to brands. They are not very loyal to any specific membership organizations. So we had to sort of reorient and think about our customer being out there. And as you said, engaging them on a personal level. Who are they? If you begin with some really basic things, what are their names?
I like that.
It's the most fundamental aspect of anyone that's in a business, right? Know your customer's name.
Right.
And for building community, it seems to make a lot of sense as well. Second stage is know their story. Once you know their story, meaning their backstory, are they from a one Jewish parent home? Did they have a good bar mitzvah experience or a bad bar mitzvah experience? Did they have a great experience at camp and like being outdoors and with other people singing, but they don't like being confined in a room for services? Once you know their story, and their story includes some fetching a little bit too, then you're in a conversation. Then the third step is try to share with them how they can become part of the story of the greater Jewish people. And in that respect, we are saying to them, don't be a participant or an observer in Jewish life, but be actively engaged in it because you are talented. You got into a great college. Your parents are paying up the gazoo, so you can go pay for tuition, or grandparents in some cases. We need you. We need you to be the builders in the community, not just people who show up now and then when we have a free chicken dinner.
Yeah, that's a very. I love your philosophy. You know, it's difficult though for Jewish kids on campus today regarding the legitimacy of Israel. There are lots of problems, and they have to learn how to be able to respond to it and react to it. How do you help that with this?
So again, if you go to that same formula, what we found is that this generation really, really likes people. Not places, but people. They connect with, engage with people. We have a program that has evolved now to over 70 campuses called the Israel Fellows Program.
Was that Natan Sharansky?
This is Natan Sharansky's, he says his greatest priority now at the Jewish Agency is to ensure that in every campus where we have at least 1,000 Jewish students, that will have an Israel Fellow. And I know from when we talked a little about this last year on your show, somebody called up after the show and said, do we have an Israel Fellow? And it was in Pittsburgh in this case. We should have one there. So I'm going to give it a big plug again this year because this year actually Natan Sharansky and Michael Oren hosted a reception for us in Washington. And Michael Oren, the ambassador, was talking about it. And he said, if I had to choose between writing another book, making the case for Israel, or having just one more of these fellows on campus who was on the front lines actually engaging other students in what their homeland is about, and frankly, taking on some of their professors at times, who sometimes are a little fakakta in their explanation of Israel and the Jewish world. And they're not afraid to do so. And neither should the students. On the other hand, it's a David and Goliath situation if you expect a student to stand up to their professor who actually is the one that's giving them grades. So we try to introduce them to Israel through Israelis and being a part of the Jewish people and helping build their confidence so that they can actually explain why it is to their friends and sometimes to their professors why they are viewing Israel incorrectly.
You know something, what I wanted you to explain to make clear to our viewers actually is that Natan Sharansky, who's the head of the Jewish Agency for Israel, which gets some of its funding from the Federation,
Sure.
Gets and develops Israelis, special Israelis that are really at the prime of their, professional careers, to participate in this. And they come here to the United States and they're dispersed throughout the campuses. Explain it a little bit more thoroughly.
So in some respects, this is, Natan always has a grin on his face when he talks about this particular program, I think in part because he sees it as a new form of Zionism, a borderless Zionism,
Yeah, it's interesting.
where ideas of Jewish life and the Jewish state, the modern Jewish state, are not confined to a classroom, are not confined even to someone visiting on a trip or a Hasbara brochure, something that sort of makes the case for Israel. Israel has to compete in a marketplace of ideas. Its universities have to compete with the London School of Economics or the best schools in the world. The good news is, as we know from Startup Nation, not only can Israel compete, but it can compete in exciting and tremendous ways that are very appealing, by the way, to Jewish and non-Jewish students. I love when I visit a campus and a student of Indian or Jamaican background comes up to me at a Hillel event or an activity on behalf of Israel and says, how come I can't go on Birthright? And I think it underscores something that our young people on campuses and young adults understand. That is, identity today is something that is open, and their friends are interested in hearing about their Israel trips, are interested in hearing about a Passover Seder, are interested in hearing about why and in what ways Jews are different. Many of them grew up without that. So for this generation, we think that the combination of an exciting Israel that many will experience for themselves on a personal basis, that they will then post YouTube videos that they will then share their own creative writings, sometimes through Twitter or blog in a very few number of words, but that will become very public among their Jewish and non-Jewish friends. We see Israel as a real driver today for Jewish identity in a positive way, and contrary to popular opinion and a lot of what's written about it, is not primarily through the political lens that people become engaged in Israel. Mm-hmm. They become engaged in the history. They become engaged in the language. They become engaged in the modernity of Israel, the excitement of a city like Tel Aviv, or the antiquity of Tzfat and spirituality of places in Israel. That's incredibly, incredibly different than students going to school in the Midwest or at an Ivy League school or on the West Coast. They're experiencing things through their own eyes, and I think we sometimes underestimate just how smart these students are. Do they ask questions on their trips? Absolutely. Do they all have the same political view? Have Jews ever had the same political view? It's a good thing that we have such diversity and that the students themselves are given the opportunity to form their own opinions and their own sort of adult perspectives on what their relationship with Israel will be.
Yeah. These Jewish fellows also keep connected throughout the United States.
Some of them even get married to each other, and to some of our students, the graduate
Really?
students anyway. Yeah, we have some great love stories in Shidduchim that have come out of this as well. That's a side benefit, I would say. They don't sit in offices, Barbara. My favorite thing about this program that I first learned is that they look at a map of the university the first day they arrive, and then they walk the entire campus.
You're talking about the fellows?
I'm talking about the fellows.
From Israel, okay.
And they meet people in lots of different places and from lots of different perspectives, and they're uninhibited, and they really do become great role models.
Yeah.
And that's why I do believe it is a sort of new opportunity for Zionism and for the Israel diaspora relationship to develop.
Well, the concept of Jewish peoplehood is so critical, and this certainly is one way to, create an opportunity like this. But you also have the special birthright plan when the Hillel, Taglit, birthright, is different than the other birthrights.
So we view the birthright trip as one of the real opportunities to accelerate not only discussions about being Jewish, but participation in Jewish life.
Social responsibility.
When we did polling with this generation,
Right.
using a polling firm from Washington,
Yeah.
Penn, Shawn, and Berlin, we found that the numbers of Jewish students that refer to social responsibility as being important to them is through the roof. It's not to be surprised. And so as a consequence, we know that you need to begin identity conversations with a discussion of who you are, but
Right.
it doesn't end there. And in that respect, many of the birthright students that we meet, when they come back, campus professionals will tell you it's a different engagement with them once they've returned from a birthright trip. Yeah. So the key to birthright which is a wow experience, which opens someone's eyes and frankly their other senses as well.
Transformational, it
is what are you going to do before they have that experience?
And then after.
And then what are you going to do after?
That's the key.
If you do something before, you begin to seed the idea that there is going to be an after.
Right.
And that you can't just go on this trip and say, wow, I had a great spring break, or I had a great summer experience in Israel. Here are all my pictures. Let's go to Mexico next summer. It is important. And when you ask me up front about our vision, I used the word commitment, which not everyone expects with this generation, which gets married a lot later than prior generations, that are not expressing the C word in the same ways that perhaps prior generations express commitment. But we have felt very strongly that this generation should be asked and can be asked, again, in an appropriate way and on their sort of territory, to make commitments and to begin to express them and to develop that as they become adults. It's going to look different over the arc of their growth because they are emerging adulthood is going into the 30s and the 40s before a lot of people are making family commitments and settling down in ways that prior generations did. So we recognize if you treat them like kids during college, a mistake that a lot of people make, continue to give them what they had at camp, continue to give them what they had in youth programs and things like that. Don't expect them then to act like adults and make adult commitments. If, however, you begin the process earlier, perhaps by the time they graduate, perhaps by the time they're in graduate school, or make a move for a career, a short-term move, you're that much further in the discussion about what commitment actually means.
You know something? You are remarkable. You're a remarkable leader. It's no wonder it's a successful program. You have a lot of different programs. There's one we're going to learn about next. It's called The Big Question. And we'll meet Sheila Katz, who's the director of it. But I want to tell you something. You've done such a job. It's a pleasure, Wayne.
Thanks so much.
We'll be back with the remainder of our program right after this brief message. Welcome back to Mosaic, and welcome to you, you pretty woman, you.
Thank you.
Miss Katz.
Yes.
Ask the big question. You're the director of this program. It's a year old. Mm-hmm. Okay. What does it mean, ask a big question?
What does it mean?
Yeah, what does it mean?
Exactly.
I want to ask a big question.
You're asking a big question already.
Right.
So Ask Big Questions is Hillel's newest national initiative that brings diverse college students together for conversations that help them understand themselves and others.
So in other words, you initiate a conversation on a topic. For instance, what I was reading about was a birthday. Mm-hmm. Okay? You get people together and you ask them about the big questions. What's a birthday? Mm-hmm. Tell our viewers how they respond.
So it's interesting as we would define a big question differently. So a big question is one that everyone can answer and it leads to stories. So we might say, what day in your life would you live over as a big question? And perhaps a birthday would come up in that scenario. So we're really helping students think back to points in their lives where they've had experiences, articulate them, share them, and then learn from themselves and learn from the other people around them, perhaps even unlearning assumptions that they've made about the people in the room.
So the idea is, of course, you know, all these young people are technically very skilled, mm-hmm. and they talk to each other on videos all day long, or on iPhones or whatever. How do you get them into a conversation, one-on-one or six-on-one or whatever? How do you get them together and ask questions?
It's so interesting. We keep getting all these awards for being innovative, but I like to say that what we're doing is radically old. We are literally gathering college students, usually in residence halls, to sit and have conversations face-to-face with each other. But today, because of technology, it really is innovative, and it's really necessary that we're reteaching students how to talk to one another in a way that provides depth. So we actually, funny enough, use technology to help aid in getting them interested to have these conversations. I spend about 25% of my time online. We have a dynamic website, askbigquestions.org, great Twitter feed, we're on Facebook, and we try to build the buzz up to get students to want to participate in this. And we find that if students are answering questions online, that their friends will then ask them, you know, tell me more about this, or I'm really interested in what you posted, I want to talk to you about this. So we use a good mix of technology, but at the end of the day, we charge our fellows on 25 campuses around North America to gather their diverse peers together in a room and start the conversation in person. And that's the hardest piece.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The idea of gathering them together mm-hmm. and create an opportunity for a conversation also creates a very strong bonding sense, too.
Absolutely.
Which is probably what you're trying to do.
Yes, this is all built off of Hillel's peer engagement methodology. We've been doing internships called the Campus Entrepreneurship Initiative and the Peer Network Engagement Internship for years now. And this builds from that methodology that students can engage other students in a really impactful way. And now we're actually saying, instead of creating a new program, let's just work on the conversations that we're having. Because it's Jewish for us to sit and ask somebody how they are and really mean it. And it's Jewish for us to learn where people feel at home and how that relates to their sense of the homeland and their relationship with Israel. And we've just found that this is a step that universities are missing, that our students are missing, and we want to get it back.
Yeah, you know, Hillel was famous for his questions, but he had a method of asking the questions that was very inviting.
Absolutely. So this is all after our namesake Hillel. I say all the time we're not named Shammai for a reason, right? The people come to Shammai, wants to hit them with a ruler to go away, and maybe we have days where we feel that way with other people. But Hillel is known for being inclusive, for asking big questions, for listening to people that are different than him. He would always consult with Shammai before making decisions, and then making thoughtful decisions based on how he felt and the people around him. And we want our students to have great empathy. We want them to be listeners, and we want them to say, you might feel differently than me on this question and issue area, but I'm going to listen to you because that's what being a good person means. And so we want them to go off in the world as good people.
You know something, the program is a year old. Okay, how do you hope it will proceed, and where do you want it to go?
Yeah, I mean, we always say when you're doing work like this, you hope that you don't need to be on campuses anymore, or that this happens naturally. We're hoping this moves into the center of the university. We believe this project is helping the university deliver on its mission. Most universities say they're creating whole citizens, or they're helping diverse students build relationships. And we hope this moves into the center of the space, and that universities really adopt programs like this, because the more work we're doing like this, the more fertile environment Hillel has to do the important work we're doing with Jewish students. So as we spend more time on campuses, we're working to push this more to be integrated in the university, and we have several examples of how that's starting to take place, which is very exciting.
That is wonderful, and I'm so pleased with your enthusiasm, and we have a short video that will give us a more graphic overview, but I thank you. It's such a wonderful thing to have you here. Let's look at the video.
Thank you so much. Yes.
When was your last truly great conversation? That life-changing conversation where you saw the world differently, where your own world got just a little bit bigger. How often do we have conversations like that? Or recognize and appreciate all the possibilities that came from them? The paths we took, the people who entered our lives, the communities we built, and all of the ripple effects as a result. Great conversations change our world. They help us see the bigger picture in our everyday lives. And they start with asking big questions. College is the time for great conversations. It's our time to discover the world. It's our time to discover who we are. Across North America, diverse groups of students are making time to have great, intentional conversations about life, relationships, purpose, and community. About the things that connect us rather than divide us. To understand each other and understand ourselves at the same time. Can we change the world through great conversations? We believe we can. All you have to do is ask. Ask big questions. www.askbigquestions.org.
Sydney Portnoy, what a pleasure it is to have you here. That video that we just came back from, I think was dynamite. It shows one program, Big Question, that takes place on the Hillel campus. But aside from that, you are the Outstanding Volunteer of the Year. Oh, no, not of the year, of all the years. You have done such a remarkable job. Why did you pick Hillel?
Well, I guess, like they say, things don't happen overnight. I've been volunteering in the Jewish community for 25 years, and I was between jobs, so to speak. I had just finished being chair of our Central Agency for Jewish Education in Miami. And there was a real need at the University of Miami Hillel to revitalize it. And I was asked if I would do it. I had just come off a great honor. My sons had staffed a birthright trip with all of their childhood friends, all of whom I knew, and their college friends. And they asked me if I would staff it with them, which of course I did. At that point, March of the Living was also a birthright provider.
And you were involved with
and
March
I was
of the
involved
Living.
with the March of the Living,
Right.
so we made arrangements, and next thing I knew, I had spent 5 days in Poland and 10 days in Israel with this age group, and I fell in love. And I said, where have I been in the Hillel movement, in this age group? And that coinciding with the need at University of Miami and some community members and people in Washington asking me if I would take this on. I jumped right in, and I haven't looked back since.
It's a big job, but it's a big challenge trying to educate people to join you. Do you find that true?
Well, it's been an education for me as well. Yes, number one, like any Jewish organization, it takes funding, and it takes significant funding. And you know, I found that a typical large gift for Hillel is not what we're used to as a large gift. $1,000 is considered a big gift to a local Hillel. But I think my main goal has been in the last 4 years to educate people that this is the future. I sit at the Federation table, and I sit at the table with a lot of us who, you know, are always critical of this younger generation. They don't care about their Jewishness. They don't care about Israel. And I'm here to tell you that that's really not true. My money's on them. They are enlightened, they are resourceful, they love Israel, they can't get enough ways on how to get back to Israel. We meet them where they are on the campus, and we offer for them, you know, we enhance their college experience, and we add value to the university's experience with them.
I was listening to Wayne earlier. It was telling us what a remarkable outreach opportunity you provide the students with. You know, you go to them, and then you start to engage them in different ways. I have to tell you, you should feel very, very good about what you're selling. You have a marvelous project.
Thank you. I really believe, I genuinely believe this, that Hillel is, as it's positioned today, is one of the most important Jewish organizations in the world today, and I mean that literally. The Reut Institute in Israel was commissioned to make an analysis of Hillel, and the Reut Institute, as you know, doesn't take any money from the organizations that it makes the evaluation of. And they concluded that with us being positioned in 6 continents, with over 550 franchises, for lack of a better word,
Yeah, it's an international organization.
Involving young people who are creative and energetic and want to see change, that I think we are one of the best stories in the Jewish community today. These young people are making a difference. One of our core values is that we want to encourage them to be distinctively Jewish but universally human. And we all know that in this day and age, the world we need help. It's our time to be a light unto the nations, and we are motivating these young people. We're first engaging them and then empowering them, and they're running with it.
Siddhi, what a pleasure to listen to you. Really, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And thank you for being with us as well. Be with us again next week when we have another look into the Jewish world. Goodbye from Mosaic. Special thanks to the K Family Foundation, lead underwriters for Mosaic.